The air in Dubai is thick, not just with the sweltering 110-degree heat, but with the tension that vibrates through the gold leaf corridors of the Al Naseem suite. A door slams, a sound that echoes like a gunshot against the marble. Megan stands in the center of the room, her silhouette framed by the floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the Persian Gulf. But she isn't looking at the sunset. She is looking at a set of travel documents resting on a mahogany table. Beside them, a formal notice from the protocol department of the Emirate. The message is silent but deafening. Your presence is no longer requested. Thousands of miles from the rainy gray of London, the ghost of rejection has found them again. Harry stands by the balcony, his jaw tight, his knuckles white as he grips his phone. It wasn't supposed to happen here. In the land of infinite luxury and diplomatic neutrality, they were supposed to be untouchable. But as the private jet engines whine on the tarmac in the distance, a terrifying question hangs in the humid air. If the world is shrinking for a prince and his duchess, where is left to go before they are simply gone? The wheels of the private Gulfstream touched the desert floor with a whisper, not a thud. For Harry, the desert had always represented a strange kind of peace, a place where the shadows of Windsor couldn't reach. As he stepped off the plane, the heat hit him like a physical weight, a stark contrast to the cold, clinical stares of the British tabloids. He reached back, taking Megan's hand. Her grip was iron. In the back of the armored SUV, the silence was luxurious. Megan stared out at the passing skyscrapers, her mind already weaving a tapestry of influence. This was to be their rebranding, the global royals. If London wouldn't have them, and Hollywood was becoming a minefield, the Middle East offered a different kind of currency. Influence, respect, power. She checked her reflection in her compact, flawless, determined, yet there was a flicker of something in her eyes. A frantic need to be seen as more than a refugee from a family feud. They were greeted at the Alcazar with the smell of oud and the sight of bowing staff. For a few hours, the illusion was perfect. They were treated like the sovereigns they felt they were meant to be. Harry felt the tension in his shoulders dissolve for the first time in months. He poured a glass of sparkling water and looked at Megan, who was reviewing her speech for the following night's summit. "We did it," he whispered. "We found a place where the noise stops." But the noise never truly stops. It only changes frequency. As the moon rose over the Gulf, Harry's phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was an encrypted message from an old contact in the Foreign Office. 3 words that turned the warm desert air into ice. The Sheik knows. Harry felt a familiar pit in his stomach, the sensation of the floor falling away. The morning didn't bring sunlight. It brought a sterile, terrifying politeness. Megan noticed it first at breakfast. The general manager, who had been a flurry of bows the night before, now stood at a distance, his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes fixed on a point 3 inches above her head. The Sheik sends his deepest regrets. The liaison began, his voice as smooth and cold as polished marble. But due to evolving diplomatic sensitivities, the summit's keynote addresses have been restructured. Your presence is no longer required on the dais. Megan felt the blood drain from her face. It wasn't just a schedule change. It was a public execution of irrelevance. She looked at Harry, expecting him to roar, to demand an explanation, to invoke the name of his father or the memory of his mother. But Harry sat paralyzed. He knew this move. This was the invisible hand of the institution he thought he had escaped. "What sensitivities?" Megan asked, her voice trembling with a controlled, dangerous edge. "We were invited. We have a contract." The liaison didn't blink. In this region, Duchess, contracts are written in sand. Relationships are written in stone. And it seems your stones have been moved. Back in the suite, the reality set in. The security detail outside their door had been halved. The floral arrangements had been removed. The message was clear. You're no longer guests. You are complications. Harry paced the length of the room, his breath coming in ragged bursts. The psychological trauma of his childhood, the feeling of being moved like a chess piece by men in gray suits, surfaced with a vengeance. He picked up a crystal vase and, for a second, It looked like he would hurl it against the wall. Instead, he set it down with a terrifyingly gentle touch. "They're doing it again," he choked out. "They're hunting us in the one place we thought we were safe." The door opened. Not a knock, just the sound of the electronic lock disengaging. A security official stood there with 2 envelopes. One-way tickets. Harry stood before the floor-to-ceiling window, his reflection ghostly against the backdrop of the Arabian Gulf. He wasn't looking at the luxury yachts bobbing in the harbor. He was staring at the man reflected behind him, the Emirati protocol liaison, a man whose smile had vanished the moment the London directives arrived. "You don't understand," Harry said, his voice a low, dangerous vibration. "I'm not a tourist. I'm not a complication. You invited us here under the banner of a partnership." The liaison remained impassive, a statue in a bespoke suit. "Your Highness," he began, the title now sounding more like a mockery than a mark of respect. "The Sheikh values stability above all things. We have been informed that your current trajectory is at odds with the diplomatic harmony we maintain with the British Crown. We cannot be the stage for your rebellion." The word rebellion snapped something inside Harry. It was the primal wound reopening, the sensation of being the spare even in a foreign land. He turned around, his face flushed, eyes burning with a localized fire that seemed to suck the oxygen out of the room. He realized then that his royal blood was no longer a shield. It was a target. Every door he thought he had opened with his own merit was actually held open by the very institution he had spent years disparaging. "Who told you to do this?" Harry demanded, stepping into the liaison's personal space. "Was it the palace? Was it the Foreign Office? Give me a name." The liaison simply lowered his head. "The wind blows from the north, Prince Harry. We merely adjust our sails." Harry stormed back to the suite, the golden hallways now feeling like a gilded cage. He found Meghan standing by the luggage, her hands trembling as she scrolled through a tablet. The news was already breaking, not as a diplomatic snub, but as a voluntary departure. The narrative was being written by someone else, as it always was. "They're erasing us, Harry," she whispered, her voice cracking. "They're making it look like we failed them." The rage in Harry transitioned from heat to a cold, crystalline focus. He realized that the Sheikh hadn't just acted on a whim. He had been presented with a dossier, a list of liabilities and security concerns curated by the gray suits in London to ensure that no matter where the couple landed, the ground would remain unstable. He grabbed his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in months, a direct line to a senior aide at Buckingham Palace. "Tell him I know." Harry hissed into the receiver when the line picked up. "Tell my father that he can take the security, he can take the titles, but he cannot buy the world's silence. You think you've won because you've closed one door in Dubai." There was a long, static-filled pause on the other end of the line. "Prince Harry," the voice responded, cool and devoid of emotion. "The king isn't the one closing the doors. You are the one walking through them." Harry stared at the phone as the line went dead. The silence that followed was more deafening than any argument. He looked at Meghan, and for the first time, the defiance in her eyes was replaced by a raw, naked fear. They weren't just being kicked out of a city. They were being exiled from the global stage. The departure was not a royal procession. It was an evacuation. Meghan sat in the rear of the black SUV, her face a mask of stone, illuminated only by the rhythmic flash of passing runway lights. She had spent the last 3 hours in a state of hyper-focused silence, her hands moving with mechanical precision as she oversaw the packing of the trunks. The heavy silk gowns, the bespoke jewelry, the strategic wardrobe of a modern global diplomat. It was all folded into darkness. Each snap of a suitcase latch felt like a door closing on a future she had already begun to inhabit. Beside her, Harry was a man besieged. He stared out the window, but he wasn't seeing the desert. He was seeing the ghost of 1997, the feeling of being whisked away under the cover of darkness, of being handled by men who communicated in whispers and logistics. The psychological weight was suffocating. He had spent his entire adult life trying to outrun the firm, only to find that their shadow was long enough to reach across continents and command the hand of an Eastern sheik. They didn't even let us stay until dawn, he muttered, his voice thick with a mix of exhaustion and unprocessed grief. As if we were contagion. Megan didn't look at him. Her eyes were fixed on the private terminal's entrance. It's not about the stay, Harry. It's about the optics. They want us to feel small. They want us to feel like we're running. She finally turned to him, her gaze sharp, desperate. But we aren't running. We are relocating. As the SUV pulled onto the apron, the Gulfstream waited, its engines already whining, a low-frequency hum that vibrated through the marrow of their bones. There were no dignitaries to see them off. No Hanschucks, just a line of security guards in tan uniforms, their faces unreadable, their bodies forming a human wall between the couple and the land that had just rejected them. Harry stepped out of the car and stopped. He looked at the British diplomatic vehicle parked 50 yards away. The driver didn't move, but the headlights flashed once, a signal, or perhaps a salute to a fallen soldier. Harry felt a surge of pure, unadulterated fury. It was a taunt, a reminder that even in exile, he was monitored. He was still a property of the Crown, even if the Crown no longer wanted him in its house. He climbed the stairs of the jet, his footsteps heavy. Inside, the cabin was a vacuum of luxury, cold and silent. As the door sealed shut with a pressurized hiss, the isolation became absolute. Megan sank into the cream leather seat, her composure finally fracturing. She didn't cry, but she pulled a pashmina tight around her shoulders, shivering despite the desert air, still trapped in the plane. Harry sat opposite her, reaching out to take her hand. For a moment, they were just two people trapped in a high-altitude void, floating between a past that hated them and a future that felt increasingly out of reach. The plane began to taxi. Through the small porthole, Harry watched the Burj Khalifa recede into a needle of light. He realized with a terrifying clarity that the world was shrinking. The sanctuaries were burning down.